Hello, hello, hello. Have people join? You can put in the chat, where do you work? Where are you joining from? And maybe share with us a quest that you're on right now. Apparently, the last time that I was on this webinar, I was looking for round linen placemats, and I'm sorry to say that I have never found the correct round linen placemats. Because I have a round table, so I was getting round placemats. But I've never found ones that I like, so I could say I'm still on that quest. Allie, Paulus, greeting us with style, top of the afternoon. I feel like that might be a nod to that it's St. Patrick's Day soon, like top of the afternoon, maybe. And if you can make sure your chat is to everyone, and maybe at some point oh look, the speakers, oh, you're on a quest right now is potty training. Oh my God, complete all the Lego flower sets. Gabby, I'm super into those flower sets too. Although now I've shifted, I'm working on the typewriter, which is,
Ooh,
yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing. I've done the birds too.
nice. Yeah, they're featured in my background here.
Oh, I see. I see them. They're really fun. I think Legos are amazing. So for people who are joining, we're sharing where you work, where you're joining from, and what's a quest that you're on right now. And it can be we were talking before the call, like, should it be like a serious, like, emotional quest that you're on? And we decided to keep it light. But, if you want to go deep, you super, super can. So on a quest to renovate a bathroom, that feels hard. I called somebody about renovating my bathroom, and it's a really tiny bathroom. And he said the basic charge is $50,000. And I was like, what? My bathroom is like, I don't know, like it's like 5 feet by 5 feet. It's like not even 50 square feet. I'm like, no, I don't. Oh, Allie, you have such faith in me. I really cannot renovate my bathroom myself. Bless you, though. Thank you for thinking so highly of me. But no. What about other SEL? Sarah from M&R. Oh, wait. Oh, you're a sourdough starter. Oh, right. Gotta admire sourdough starter. But these are so good. A quest for daycare. Oh, that feels hard. So as you're joining, we're asking you to put where you work and where you're joining from and what's a quest that you're on right now. We're going to give it another couple minutes before we get started as people join. And thank you for sharing your quest so far. A quest to use AI to improve sports gambling odds. Wow. That seems like a worthwhile endeavor. Non-hectic. Eileen from Donor's Choose, I've never been to Costco, not once in my life. I know. I feel un-American, but I've never been. It always just seems so big. A quest to find the perfect nachos. Hi, Brittany. I think you have to make the perfect nachos. This is my opinion. I'm going to stick with it. I think it's hard to find the perfect nachos because they're so custom to who you are and what you really like. So, okay, we're going to give it another minute or two. Oh, so Costco's always hectic. That's just the way it is. Okay, good to know. I feel like when people are listening to the recording, it's going to feel like this random train of thought from someone that's not quite all there. I hope people can see that I'm answering the questions in the chat. So, a quest to find your next travel destination. Ricardo from Innocence Project. I know, some sunshine today at some point. Wouldn't that be great? Hi, Carly. Oh, make weaving a new hobby. Becky, that's cool. Yes, thank you, Sarah. It will be impossible. Gonna wait just another minute or two, and then we're gonna get going. It's nice to see so many of our clients on here. Thank you, clients, for joining us. That's really great. We're glad you're our client and also glad you're joining our webinar. And people who aren't our clients, we're glad you're joining the webinar too, of course. Right on, right on. Well, if you haven't already done so, please feel free to answer all that scoop and put it in the chat, and let's get started. And I'm going to kick us off today. Yeah, I'm Madeline Stanionis. I'm a partner here in M&R, and I'm going to be your host for today's fun and interesting and hopefully really helpful webinar. We're going to start with some basics about what Scout Quest is and how it works, and then we're going to dig in with some of the exciting things that we're doing. And then we will have time for Q&A. There's also the Q&A feature down at the bottom of the screen. I think it's at the bottom of your screen, and you can use that for Q&A. We do have staff who will be answering your questions as we go. Sometimes we're going to raise up a question and answer it live. We may have time for Q&A at the end of the webinar as well. And also for folks who ask, and people will ask 1 million times in the chat from now on, so you can all answer for them. We will be sharing the recording of this tomorrow, so you will have it, and you can watch it all you want, all weekend long if you like. You can watch it over and over again. I'm joined today by a couple of great folks, Jonathan Benton, a senior vice president here in M&R, Sarah Coughlin, and also Gabby Green. I'll tell you about all three of those folks in just a minute, and we're supported by M&R staff, Laura Clavon, Julia Allenby, and Leah Mancuso, especially in the chat. For those who are in the question and answer, for those who don't know, we are M&R, and M&R works with nonprofits. We've been doing this for about 30 years, and we basically do whatever it takes to get folks to engage in causes around them. We really believe in nonprofits. It's who are put on this earth to serve, and we do everything possible to do so. That includes organizing and fundraising and advocacy, advertising, media relations, social media, whatever it takes to get somebody to actually engage in the causes of advancing justice, alleviating suffering, and making the world just a better place. That's what we try to figure out how to do. And the folks that will be presenting today include, first of all, our guest, Gabby Green, is the email marketing director for the Humane Society of the United States and Humane Society International, where she fights for a better world for animals everywhere. She has over 9 years experience in the nonprofit email marketing world and has been a longtime M&R client, and she's also super nice. She lives in Maryland with her wife and her rescue street dog from Puerto Rico, Tilly. Then we're also joined with Sarah Coughlin, who is M&R's Director of Advertising Technology, which she describes as a fancy way of saying that she's our resident nerd about programmatic advertising, cookies, and cookie deprecation. I always want to say depreciation, but it's deprecation, right? Okay. Multi-channel attribution and a whole bunch of words and lingo like that. She lives in Chicago, and she has two very large and very silly and entertaining rescue dogs named Maurice and Blaze. And then we have Johnny Benton, who is our senior vice president, and he's sort of the strategic lead for our data team and the person that's behind so much of what Scout Quest and Scout have become here at M&R. And his focus is to really just boil down what matters and throw out what doesn't, and develop visions that give all of M&R's clients sort of actionable reporting that drives strategy. Johnny does also have two rescue dogs named Scuppers and Bean, in addition to two very adorable children too. So he's very busy. Right on.
All right, thanks, Madeline. So I'm just gonna do a very brief, what is Scout Quest, before turning it over to Gabby to share a cool story about how it actually kind of works in practice. But we kind of started our data co-op Scout Quest when we were running into a challenge where a lot of our clients were having problems with deliverability. So when your emails are going to a spam folder, one of the best first pieces of advice that you can get is you should start holding out people and suppressing people who aren't engaging with your email program, which virtually all of our clients do. And over the years, those inactive files, there's always a feeling that there's some valuable people that we're not emailing that we could be emailing, if only we knew who those right people were. And so we kind of grouped some organizations together to try to identify people who were on the overlap between multiple organizations and find people who are engaging for one organization and inactive for another, and share that information so that people would have the best targeting options at their disposal possible. All right. So what makes ScoutQuest different from other co-ops? There's a big thing. So, co-ops are not totally new. There's a lot of mail co-ops out there, some online co-ops as well. And I think one of the kind of big features of most co-ops is list sharing, allowing one group to send mail or email, in some cases, to another organization's donors or supporters. And that's really not what ScoutQuest is about. We're really about enhancing the data that you have on your supporters and getting a better understanding of how they engage with other groups. or not. And so what that means is that there's a level of privacy that we're protecting that you might not see with other co-ops, because we're not kind of just passing lists back and forth between organizations. It's about really just kind of enhancing and doing the best with kind of performance indicators that you can get from other groups. So yeah, nobody gets to email someone that they didn't already have the right to email. And that's kind of like the most important part of underlying values behind Scout Quest. So that brief summary, I'm going to pass it over to Gabby, who can share a little bit more about what this looked like for HSUS.
Yeah, hey everyone. So like Madeline mentioned, I'm here as an M&R client and a Scout Quest fan on behalf of HSUS. And so just to give you a little bit of background, we were in a unique but unfortunately probably quite common position that some of you might be in. So back in 2018, before I was part of the HSUS email team, we didn't have great email data hygiene practices in place yet. We were on Blackbaud using a shared IP address, and our sender domain got blacklisted. So it was pretty much doomsday for my poor predecessor, who had to put in place really strict audience selection criteria for a long period of time in order to get that domain reputation back and remove the blacklist. So this meant that a lot of emails fell off of the active file. It gave us a really large pool of folks to re-engage. And then in 2021, we migrated from Luminate to Engaging Networks, and we only brought over the active file during that transition, which was sort of grown back, but about half the size of it was in its 2018 glory. So this kind of perfectly positioned us to make use of Scout Quest to help us find treasure in the trash and be strategic about who to re-engage from a pool of honestly millions of emails while protecting our deliverability, which was huge for us, given our history. Yeah, next slide. So as a client of Scout Quest, I kind of wanted to show you an example of what you get after M&R works their magic and gives you a menu or sort of dashboard comparing the data that you submitted. So we got this great one with a lot of people that matched that we were able to pull from. My paid acquisition colleagues purchased some of the donor groups that you see here, but on email team, we really focused on the clickers to other orgs that weren't active on our list for that re-engagement purpose. And like Johnny mentioned, we had an opt-in for them, so it was pretty easy to loop them back in. And after we purchased these groups, we were able to import them into Engaging Networks. We bring them into the active file. We did it in mid-September in advance of year-end fundraising. We wanted to be sure that they were going to come in at a time where they were going to get a lot of really engaging content and fundraising appeals. So not only did this help grow our mailable list by about 175,000 after some of our suppressions, but we split the file in half just to be cautious, but we ended up not having any declines in our metrics. So we were able to fold in that second group and maintain really great deliverability rates. So everyone's favorite part, right? The results. It's kind of why I'm here. But so the co-op segment that we purchased and re-engaged, we grew the file, but we actually converted over 1,350 donors sourced to email channel. So otherwise, they would have not been on the file. They would have been sitting in our CRM ROI solutions, not getting these appeals. And so of those donors, 127 of them actually set up recurring monthly gifts. So that's our favorite. And thanks to the timing of this effort, being in year end, we were able to break even on our investment within 2 months, which is fantastic for us. And as of last month, we've hit nearly a 200% return on investment, which is what I like to see and what my bosses like to see. So we're very happy with these results. And it shows that we were really perfectly positioned with a very large lap segment to take on this sort of strategic re-engagement of the file to maximize the value. And I did just want to make sure that I mentioned, in addition to the great email re-engagement stuff, my paid ads colleagues have a pretty significant Facebook acquisition strategy. It's where we invest most of our budget. So they were always looking for new creative ways to tap into audiences, and they had been doing this way before we did on the email side. So for several years now, they've been using ScoutQuest Facebook lookalike audiences, and it's been one of the strongest prospecting audiences for them, which is fantastic. So my advice would be, whether you're looking to reactivate emails or find new leads, which I'm sure many of you are, I highly recommend giving ScoutQuest a try. And that's it for me, but I'll be monitoring the Q&A if you have questions.
Thanks, Gabby.
Yeah.
So I can take us through kind of what it looks like to participate. First step, you have our website, quest.mrss.com, or you can just email us. We'll have our emails handy as follow-up from this webinar. We will follow up with a participation agreement for you to review and sign. We're hoping that groups can aim to sign that and get it back to us by March 22nd. And the reason for that is we're trying to get a critical mass of groups to participate at the same time. That way everybody's getting kind of the benefits of having a large cohort of people participating with fresh data together. So we have our kind of our spring cohort of ScoutQuest. We're also going to have a fall cohort of ScoutQuest that is timed before end of year. So after the agreement is signed, we will then follow up to ask you to submit a series of CSV files that includes information like your email lists, people who are kind of flags for people who are taking action on things, people who are clicking on things, and then 5 years of donation history. We then take that data from all the groups that are participating, match it together, and provide you a dashboard of how your list overlaps with all the other groups in the co-op. So that's what Gabby was referring to. We were able to tell you things like, of the names that you submitted, here's how many are clicking on emails for other groups. Here's how many are donors to other groups. Here's how many are taking action for other groups. Here's how many are monthly donors to other groups, and a variety of metrics like that. You then kind of mull that over. You have options for data that you can purchase, and we can have a conversation, answer questions about it, and you make a choice about what you'd like to purchase once you have that summary data in hand. We then, once the decision's made, we send the data back to you, and then it's there for you to do any email targeting that you want to do at that point. And so what we're hoping to do again is have folks committed by the March 22nd, and then we will have the data back to you by May 15th if you're participating as part of this cohort. What you get back in the data, if you make a data purchase, we have a few different pricing options. There is a kind of a buy everything, which comes at the cheapest rate, where if you purchase all the records that we match to the co-op or another group in the co-op, it is 3 cents per match record. And then we have a few different kind of specialized audiences that kind of come with different use cases in mind. One would be a reactivation audience of people who aren't clicking on your emails, but are clicking on emails for other groups. So that would be, in our minds, the ideal email reactivation audience that an organization might want. We can limit the poll just to that audience, and the rate for that is 15 cents per record. We have a similar poll for people who are donating to other groups, but not for you, also 15 cents a record. And then we have a custom option that is 25 cents per record, and we'll really work with you to figure out whatever we can pull from the database, as long as kind of we have access to what it is. And so examples of the kinds of things groups might want for that would be, we want people who are monthly donors to multiple groups. We could do a custom data pull to pull that together for you, for example. Andrea had asked in the comments if the co-op was only for emails or also for postal mail. And until now, it has only been for emails. But we are going to be rolling out a new addition at this round of the co-op, which is we are going to be bringing in direct mail data for the first time. And a couple important things about how we're treating this. This is not to say we're becoming a direct mail co-op, because we're function completely different than direct mail co-ops. This isn't meant for targeting big audiences that you don't have access to with mail. This is the goal of providing this data came from some feedback that we got from earlier participants, where we had this idea where if we could identify people who are giving, who are prospects for you, non-donors on your file, but giving to other groups, that those people might be worth trying to send mail to and seeing how that performs to expand your mail audiences with data that you have in your own CRMs. In practice, the way that turned out, what we heard back was that in a lot of cases, someone's online giving history isn't necessarily a great indicator that they're going to respond to mail. Um, and so we wanted to kind of refine what we were doing here and ask people to share their direct mail giving history too, so we could identify, again, who on your online file is making direct mail gifts to other groups. So again, with the goal here of targeting mail to people who are on your online file, who are the most likely to respond. Important to note here is we're keeping the direct mail data separate from the online donation history. So when we identify someone as a donor, we're able to identify if they're an online donor, and we're able to identify if they're a mail donor, and not just kind of a broad, they're a donor, but you don't know where they're converting. So we thought it was really important that we're able to identify kind of both buckets to help inform your targeting. And we're going to be doing that for the first time, so that's very exciting. The other new stuff pertains to advertising, and so I'm going to be passing it over to my colleague Sarah to walk you through how Scout can fit into your ads program.
Yeah, thanks, Johnny. We're going to talk through this in a couple of parts. So first, I'm going to walk you through some of the ways that you can use the sort of default Scout Quest data with advertising to enhance your other channels. And then we're going to get into some of the sort of ad specific fun stuff, including a new announcement that we're really, really stoked about. But let's just start by talking about some things that you can do with your enhanced first-party data. So like Johnny was saying, the goal of Scout Quest in a lot of ways is to enable you to target your own supporters more effectively and with more sophistication. And I think a lot of times we talk about that in terms of email, for example, maybe a custom strategy to reactivate people who've gone inactive for you but are still opening email for your peers. But there are loads of applications using similar tactics in advertising. And so consider this to really just be like free advice, just some thoughts that we have on fun things that you can do. Some of our clients have tried these. This is expanding on some things that other organizations have done, but this is just like free idea time. One is for fundraising. So you could take the segment of supporters who are donors to other organizations and you could run targeted ad buys to them at key moments. So this might be at end of year, certainly, but I think also a lot of organizations have moments of rapid response, some emergency that they're responding to. So this could be a really fertile audience for that. And you might even consider when you're developing creative for something like this, if these are folks who you know are donating to other organizations, what are things you could do in the creative that would really help you stand out? And so you might, for example, feature a special supporter match or something like that. Another thing that you could do is cultivation advertising. So I know a lot of M&R clients have tried this, but just to sort of recap it for folks who haven't quite dipped a toe into this, essentially this is when you serve branded content to your supporters that isn't explicitly fundraising oriented, but reinforces brand affinity. So this might be social content, like the top performing videos on your Facebook feed, or it could even be content that isn't even originating from you, like a positive media hit about the work that you're doing. And the idea is that even though someone's not going to necessarily click on an article about you and then give you money, it reinforces brand affinity so that the next time you're asking them for money, they have a stronger relationship with you and your work. And so this can be useful, for example, just in the general world of taking people who are existing supporters and making them likelier to become donors, or taking existing donors and making them likelier to become sustainers. The way we think this integrates with Scout Quest is, for example, you could take the audience of people on your file who are repeat donors from other organizations, and you could target them really specifically here. And I think this could be especially useful if you're interested in something like leveraging that stronger brand affinity in service of converting people into giving monthly gifts or making larger gifts. Finally, I know reactivation is like sort of the most common use case for Scout Quest. Like I always think of it as like, it's how it all began. And I do think there's probably a lot of fertile ground for using advertising for reactivation. So we'll often talk about lead generation ads where you're serving like a petition to totally new audiences. By a similar token, you could take people who you've identified as supporters who've maybe gone inactive for you, but are active for other organizations, and you could serve them petition content on Facebook or something like that, with the goal of getting them to take some action that would reactivate them and enable you to email them again. So those are just like 3 ideas. Again, I think this is sort of like scratching the surface, tip of the iceberg, choose your metaphor. But this is some of the fun stuff that you could do using advertising for your existing audiences. But I think in some ways, the even more exciting stuff is talking about using ScoutQuest to acquire new supporters. So let's talk a bit about that. Okay, so this is the premium advertising tier that our partners at HSUS have been using. I feel like Gabby sold this better than I could have anyway, but just to kind of briefly summarize for all of you what this is, I think probably a lot of folks on this call are already familiar with lookalike audiences. They've been a pretty popular option for, I don't know, my entire professional life. But just for those who haven't thought about them recently, essentially the way this works is you upload an audience to Meta, and then Meta uses machine learning to build a model of people who look like that audience. So in this case, we upload the Scout Quest segments. So this would be something like engaged supporters or monthly donors. And then Meta builds a model of people who look like them. Just to be clear, again, like Johnny noted earlier, you're not actually buying access to the underlying file. Rather, we're using that underlying file to build a lookalike, and then the lookalikes are what you get access to. A subscription to this gives you access to a wide range of lookalikes. So we've listed a few of the examples here. A good thing to note is we've got these segments like engaged supporters, donors, monthly donors. For every one of those, subscribing to this is going to give you the whole cross Scout Quest version of that, but it's also going to give you the sector specific version. So if you wanted to look at monthly donors versus monthly donors to enviro groups versus monthly donors to wildlife groups, you can sort of like spin that out. And we'll talk a little bit more about like some kind of weird quirks that come up from slicing and dicing those lookalikes. I think it's helpful to just like visualize like on a very basic level what are lookalikes and how they work. And so again, to just reiterate, on a basic level, all we're doing is giving a platform, in this case, Meta, a list of people, and then they're using an algorithm to model a larger group of people who look like them. And I think this can be easiest to understand like in really concrete terms. So if you uploaded a file of me and my friends to Meta, you might get a list of people who are in our early 30s, live in large metro areas, donate to progressive causes, watch a lot of HBO, work from home, or devoted parents of chaotic rescue dogs. Like the idea is you're gonna get a lookalike that looks like the seed file. So if you gave it your donor file, I'm not gonna make assumptions, but I think you can all probably guess what kind of people you would wind up with from that. The really nice thing about ScoutQuest lookalikes is that they enable you to get a little bit more specific in the seed file. So let's say, for example, that your high value donors have some characteristics that are different from the rest of your file. It might be that they're wealthier. It might be that they live in a different area. It might be that there are like totally other characteristics, right? Like maybe you're recruiting those people through a different department and they have somehow figured out a targeting method that is yielding a totally different profile than mass market. Whatever those reasons may be, you might find that if you build a lookalike off of a seed file that's based on some characteristics behaviorally, you might end up with a slightly different profile. And so that's really the goal of this, is to give you a few different profiles that you can sort of mess around with. And I will actually say we have tested this a little bit with some really interesting results. Okay, so what we did here is we took the list of all wildlife donors and we uploaded it into Facebook and we got a lookalike, and that was great. And then we built a couple more lookalikes. And I think you may have to advance the slide because I did an annoying animation thing. Okay, great, yeah. And then go one more time and you'll see one more layer of this. Yeah, okay, cool. So we built a lookalike of all wildlife donors, and then we compared that to the lookalike in that same sector, wildlife, of just monthly donors. And they looked pretty similar. But then we pulled in the lookalike based on that same sector, wildlife, but specifically high value donors. And we got an audience that looked much more distinct compared to either the all donors or all monthly donors. And I think this is important because if you were to run Facebook ads, for example, like if you're able to target the wildlife high value donors, you're potentially reaching a couple million people who just wouldn't have been in your targeting audience to begin with. You also see similar results when you compare these high value audiences. And again, this is like just an example. We played around with like dozens of combinations. I personally thought the high value was most interesting, but you can get versions of this for basically whichever groups you pick. But so taking the high value donors, for example, when we compare those across sectors, we found that the lookalike of the high value donors for wildlife looked very, very different from the high value donors from rights. And then they looked very, very different from the high value donors for enviros, which is fascinating. Like there's a lot to chew on there. I'm not going to speculate about why. Ultimately, at the end of the day, these algorithms are black boxes. And so we can't tell what exactly they're picking up on. But it does suggest that organizations that are interested in diversifying your audiences have opportunities to reach some pretty different supporter profiles using this tool. Okay, this has all been Facebook. Really exciting thing. We have a brand new offering, which is for programmatic advertising. What do we mean by programmatic? It's essentially a fancy jargony way of talking about ad inventory outside of the Google and Meta duopoly, so, which I realize as I say that is maybe equally jargony. But essentially it means like most ads that aren't on your social feeds, aren't on search, aren't on YouTube. So this might include like banner ads on websites like the New York Times, those video spots that like pop up before a video on bonappetit.com. It also includes some inventory in places that didn't used to be programmatic. So internet connected TVs and even streaming audio or podcasts. So the thing that's really new is we have lookalikes that you can serve on those platforms, which I am just so stoked about. This is similar to Meta in some ways, pretty different from Meta in others, just to kind of quickly walk you through those differences. A big one is pricing. So on Meta, it's a flat fee that gives you unlimited access to all of the audiences. For programmatic, it's CPM based, which essentially means you pay for what you use. So for every 1,000 impressions that you serve, it's a $2 charge. Obviously, I assume you will be serving more than 2,000 impressions. But the idea is that the cost is going to be reflective of the scale. So if you're not running a particularly large program, this should still be accessible to you. If you're running a very large program or you're running on expensive inventory, then I think you still get sort of a bit of a deal there. The other difference is that these audiences are platform agnostic. So that means we can send them to essentially any demand side platform that you might be using. We put some examples on this slide of just DSPs that tend to be common among M&R clients and pretty big in the industry. But we do have the full list if you want to verify, like if you're using a DSP that's not listed here and you want to check, is that available? Let us know, we can tell you. The final thing that I just want to note is that this is, of course, based on a different data set. So rather than using Meta's audiences, we're partnering with Epsilon. They are a leader in the industry. They have a massive identity graph that incorporates, in a lot of ways, like much richer and more substantial information than Meta. So we're just really stoked to be partnering with them and building these lookalikes based off of their data. So this is going to be pretty cool. What all that means is that you now have two different options for the advertising tier. And so you might be asking, how do you decide between them? And you could do both. Both is good. Some organizations will get value out of that. But here's how I would think about it. Like basically ask yourself, what are the characteristics of my organization that would make this useful? And it might be that you fall into both buckets. It might mean that you fall into just one. For Meta, we think this is going to be most useful if you're already seeing success on that platform and want to increase your scale. We also think there's an extra benefit if you're interested in using custom lookalikes. So if there's a particular audience that you want us to build a lookalike off of, we're able to do that on Meta. And that's something to consider. For the programmatic tier, it's a little bit more flexible. So this could be useful at any scale, whether you're running a monthly budget of $2,500 or a monthly budget of $25,000. It's also probably a little bit more cost effective if you're running at a smaller investment and you're not willing, you're not able to sort of like put the large bucket of money toward like the Facebook offering. We also think this is going to be especially useful if you're interested in some of the channels that are newer for our industry, like audio and connected TV. We've all been advertising on Meta for a really long time, and so the targeting options are a little bit more developed there. But especially for some of these newer platforms, we've just found in running ads for our clients that it can be harder to find high quality audiences. And so we really do think that this is meeting a little bit of a niche that the industry is very much crying out for. And I think that's the end of our sort of prepared material. I don't know.
We
I'll
have some
hand things back to
questions.
Madeline.
We've got lots of questions. So I
Cool.
want to break up a couple of ones that have come up. The first is just in the chat, Allison Goldsmith. Hi, Allison. Asked, has anyone used ScoutQuest to find their non-donors who are giving to other organizations to improve non-donor conversions? And Gabby, you first had answered, but maybe I don't know if you wanted to elaborate at all.
Yeah, I just know that that has been a really well-performing group for our ads team, targeting them with appeals, petitions, all that kind of stuff to try to get them to donate to us and not just other people, but definitely.
Johnny, anything to add? Yeah.
Yeah, I would also add, like, I think a very common way of using that data is, so like pretty much every organization with a big email program has logic in place to decide when someone's going to fall into the inactive file. And with ScoutQuest, you can use the clicker data that we can provide to make sure that people are less likely to fall into that file. But a lot of groups are using that donor data as well, to say like, okay, this person's been identified as a donor to a bunch of other groups. Maybe let's not let them fall inactive quite as soon as we might for someone else. So that's a pretty common usage too.
Yeah. So we have another question. These are some of the questions we answered in the private Q&A, but I want to raise them up for everyone to take a look at. Gabby, what were some of the suppression steps you added once emails were uploaded to engaging networks?
Yeah, so like I mentioned in the chat, we have an email validation tool that we use before we import anything. That was a very small part. The other part, which I would just say is a flag for triple checking the data that you submit. Our IS team submitted a couple of folks that were actually on the active file to this, so we just had to suppress those out because they were already in the active file, so there was no need to re-loop them in.
Yep, thanks. Couple questions around cost. We're getting really nitty gritty there, and I appreciate that. It's always hard to listen to all of these questions about numbers, and then you want to write them all down. Just remember, this is being recorded. We will send you this recording later so you can find more of your answers. Brittany asked, what does the cost depend on the size of the file you submit?
Yeah, so I can answer a couple of the questions about cost here. So the cost does not come down to the file size that you submit. It comes down to the number of records you want to purchase back at the end. So theoretically, a much larger group that has a lot more data that they submit means that we're able to match more data. They might want to buy more data. So it does scale, but it's the cost is based on how many we match, not how many you submit. And ultimately that you want to purchase. So, you know, by participating and submitting your data, you're not locked into making a specific purchase amount at that point when you submit. It's about what you want to get back at the end. There is also a question about if there is a cost to participate, and there is a flat $2,000 fee for participation that I wanted to call out as well. It is waived for current M&R clients, so if people want to become current M&R clients, that's great too. But that is a fee that I hadn't mentioned earlier, so I just wanted to call that out too.
Mm-hmm. There was also a question around timing, and so folks want to get their data before Giving Tuesday, and I feel that we have a good answer to that, Johnny. For the fall cohort, the names are delivered by November 1st to set the stage for stewarding folks back in before Giving Tuesday asks.
Yeah, we need to get our kind of plans all set for the fall, but that is we will. Our general goal around that fall cohort is to get people data that they can use before Giving Tuesday. I think based on how it's run in previous years, we probably need to shift that slightly earlier than we did last year. So we will take that suggestion to heart.
Yeah, right on. I'm sorry, there was one more question around the cost, Johnny. I'm not certain if you answered that, but is there a minimum buy for the matched records or just the mix?
There's no minimum unless you're doing the custom purchase. There's a $5,000 minimum on the custom purchase, and that basically covers us if we need to get a ton of back and forth for nitty-gritty details, doing extra suppression files, that kind of stuff. There is a $5,000 minimum purchase for the custom stuff.
I think there's also been a couple questions just around sectors and location, and I think that's a pretty there questions around what kind of verticals we have. Like it says, one of the questions in terms of other groups, is that broken down by vertical? And then I think some other questions that we had around, are we getting folks from Canada? Do we work with clients there? So I wonder, Johnny, if you can talk about sort of that mix of participants.
Yeah, so currently there's about 36 groups in the co-op, and range of different organizations. I can't give you the exact breakdown of sectors of the different groups, but there is I would say there's a critical mass in the cohort of environmental groups, wildlife and animal welfare groups, rights groups, and disaster international relief organizations as well. But there's definitely groups in other sectors beyond that. I think those are the ones that are the best representative of us. This question about Canada, unfortunately, I don't have a great, I don't have a happy response. And it's that we are limited to only US participants. And the reason for that is various privacy laws. We need to kind of restrict ourselves to the US because we know that those are the laws that we're in compliance with. And so unfortunately, we can't accept Canadian participants.
Right on. Some new questions have come in. Thank you, everyone, for asking all these good questions. Is the social flat fee a one-time fee, or is that an annual license fee?
Yeah, it's an annual fee. So if you get access to the Facebook lookalike audiences that Sarah was talking about, it's $9,500 a year.
Yeah, right on. I think there's two related questions. One is from Allie Paulus asking, can you explain in a bit more detail how your digital co-op differs from competitors? And then there's another question from Emily McKay, which I think is related because it's about the difference, which is my org has wanted to participate in the past, but ran into concerns with sharing customer data with external companies. And I just wondered any insights into how our data is protected and when it's provided to M&R. And those are a bit related, Johnny. You want to go ahead and dig in?
Yeah, so how our co-op is different from other co-ops is that the data that you share with us, no personally identifiable information is shared with any other participant that they don't already have access to. So nobody is getting your donor file and running off and going to, run a campaign targeting them, because the other organizations are only getting information back on people who are on their files from that too. So that's the biggest difference. It's about finding more information about the people that you have on your file, not about kind of sharing lists around. That's the biggest summary difference of our co-op versus others.
And one of the good things about Johnny, by the way, is that he'll get on the phone with your people and answer questions pretty much at any time, and really dig in on that. Emily, that's Emily McKay who asked that question. Is you can feel free to reach out to Johnny and he can get on the phone with your folks too to really talk that through.
And Ali asked again, it's like more of an append. It is more of an append, and then beyond that, I think the advertising services that Sarah walked through is kind of really using the data that we have to find truly new people out in the world beyond that.
Sorry, yeah, I'll just say, as we have one of the most conservative legal and security teams around, and so this has so far been the only digital co-op that they've allowed, and it's for that very reason.
Yeah, and I think like Michael Stonky, I'm not certain if I'm saying your name correctly. You asked a question about this privacy as well because you're at a hospital. Johnny, do you have anything to add for hospitals and groups that are dealing with particularly sensitive data?
Yeah, I mean, so I always encourage people to make sure they're reviewing their privacy policy, making sure that we're not asking for anything that would be against our privacy policy. I actually don't think I've run into any scenarios where a group has not participated strictly because of something in their privacy policy. We don't ask we've worked with other health organizations. I don't know if we've worked with any hospitals specifically, but we are definitely not asking for personal health information. We're asking for people who are on your email list, and we're asking for people who are donors to your organization. And so, we're not asking you to share anything beyond that in what we get.
And I will just reiterate, like, we really are proud of the fact that we have done this in a way that is so protective of privacy and really respectful of people's identities, but also their behavior. We really are not trying to just give each other's information, names, etc. So it's a really big deal for us, and we appreciate all the questions about privacy. I know our industry is really concerned about it. Nelson Checkaway asked about smaller regional clients, and is there a minimum size file to really effectively model?
See, I think this is kind of the beauty of ScoutQuest, is that you might have a organization where, let's say you only have 50 monthly donors. How do you build a lookalike model on 50 people? It's like, yeah, I suppose in some cases maybe you could, but it wouldn't be the best model. It would be a very small audience there. With ScoutQuest, we're building a lookalike model based on everybody's monthly donors. So even for organizations that might not have the critical mass of a certain type of supporter, we're able to provide that to those smaller groups to do that. The other examples of that would be, as Sarah shared, we have a lookalike model of higher dollar donors, where if you're an organization that doesn't have so many high dollar donors, you can't make a lookalike model of them that's very accurate. Whereas we have everybody's higher dollar donors, we can build a model that's a lot more powerful.
Gabby, a question for you. Did you have any trouble convincing your team, boss, to participate? What were some of the strategies? You mentioned a little bit, like this is the only one that they agreed to participate in, but what were some of the strategies you undertook to make that happen?
Yeah, and I'm sure some folks on the call are thinking that too, this is great, but like, how do I get it approved? A couple things. So I would say that, I worked really closely with my paid ads team, who had already participated in this for several years and kind of showed like proof of concept, proof of product. So that was very helpful for me. For those of you that aren't in that situation, use some case studies, like use this one and see if that helps. It depends how your budget and your teams are kind of set up, but I always have a little bit of budget for list management that I'm able to use for a variety of things. And so I prioritized in one of those years and got it going. And then now that we've shown how well it works, I won't have any trouble getting it approved again.
I think one of the challenges is also that, if folks don't know what the value is of that inactive file that's just sitting around there, but you can really sort of say, like, these are, in some cases, 1 million people who at one point liked us. And I have to believe that some of them still like us if we can figure out which ones are the right ones for us to actually target. And I think that the size of that file and having a situation like you ran into where you got blacklisted is just, that's a great time to say we got to do something differently. So
yeah, and with cost per donor rising, with us investing so much in Facebook, and that just, you have to find something within I called it my trash, but there was clearly a lot of treasure in it. So I think, it's moving in that direction where we really, really need to find folks who had some affiliation with us versus brand new folks.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like a good time to bring up that the new benchmark study is coming out in just about a month. And, if anything that we've learned in benchmarks is that the work that we all do to reach people just keeps getting harder, and finding tools that can actually, recoup some of the work that we've already done is just sort of really like finding gold. So it's just such a big deal. Johnny, what about, we've talked a little bit about what that where there's an option for custom purchases. What are the kinds of custom requests that you've gotten that have been interesting that folks might be like to hear?
Yeah, so in terms of custom purchases, one of the it's never the same request, but I feel like the type of purchase that I've seen a bunch of groups do is they're looking to try to identify the most valuable people on their file and do a very targeted spend to just identify. They do the custom purchase. They see the minimum. They want to buy the $5,000 worth of the most valuable people we can get on our file, and so we'll work with them to figure out. So we're going to identify everybody who's a monthly donor to another group. And then we're going to identify everybody who's a higher dollar donor as well. And some mix of that is often a very common request. In some cases, it might be a kind of also overlay people who are higher dollar donor and are clicking on our emails, that kind of thing. Just kind of to give you some ideas, it kind of comes down to people who are running. I get the sense this is often coming from groups who are really prioritizing monthly giving as a strategy, or really prioritizing like a mid-level or major giving program. They want to use data to support those programs. So that is something to chew on for folks who are maybe involved in those types of things.
Mm-hmm. There aren't any more questions. We've answered everything. Scott Gilman asked, did you say we should expect data by Q4? For the spring, Johnny, when do you think that people would have data for the spring cohort?
Yeah, no, yes. So if you participate in the spring cohort, our goal is to get you data back by May 15th. Sorry, the point about Q4 was about the fall cohort. If you participate in the fall, we want to get you data back before Giving Tuesday, but that's if you that was pertaining to another round of the
it's practically forever away. Yeah.
Yeah.
Other questions? Anything that you haven't asked? Right on. Well, I want to say thank you so much to Gabby for showing up. And also, you know, Gabby, I hope we didn't make you feel this way, but you really sold me on it. And I know that like that was really good. But I also wanted to, you know, just to thank you for coming on. I was expecting you to share your experience, but you also really just felt like a real ally in this, and I appreciate that. And Sarah and Johnny, who are both super into this and could talk all day about this, and actually we'll be happy to talk to you about it if you'd like to, if you want to reach out. I know they both are happy to answer any questions whatsoever and could talk all day about this stuff. That's how nerdy and interesting it all is. We're really excited about Scout Quest. We're really proud that we've developed a product that respects people's privacy and still also delivers real value. And that's something we're very committed to. And so we're really delighted to have folks on this call, just figuring out how we can continue to make the co-op great. Co-op works because folks participate. So we appreciate when people sign up and participate. That's how it all works, is the richness of your work and your experiences with your donors and list members. So thank you so much. Johnny, Sarah, Gabby, anything else to add? Right on. We will, like I said, send this recording out tomorrow. And until then, have a great day.
Bye, everyone.